Welcome to Papa's Workshop. I have a great project today for you. I'm combining the love for wood turning that I have and the CNC using the laser to be able to do this project. And what I'm doing is I'm making this pen today. Now what I'm doing also is actually making a whole batch of these pens for an Army unit that's deployed. And I'm going to be putting their name right here. Now I'm not showing that part. I'm only going to show this pen today on how I made it, how I turned it, assembled it, and did the laser engraving on it. So let's get started. A day in the shop with Papa in Papa's Workshop. To support my channel, please go to patreon.com/Papa's Workshop. In today's video, I'm making a whole batch of pens and I'm laser engraving the names on them. I wanted to show you up front the pen that I'm making today. Now realize I'm making a whole batch of these pens to be able to send out to a military unit that my grandson is in. My grandson requested these pens be made for his unit that's deployed, and I want to be able to do that for him, and I'm really proud to be able to have done these pens for him. I just received all of these pen kits in the mail, so it's time to go to work to do a little bit of turning. So now I'm off to the wood bin to find some wood to be able to turn these. Now I have some ash that I think is going to be beautiful for this. It has some absolutely beautiful grain, and I think that's what I'm going to use for this project. For all of these pens, this one stick of ash is going to be plenty. Now I'm making this 3/4 inch wide strips, and I need 3 strips to be able to do it, and that will give me enough for the pens plus a little bit extra. Now I've got 3 sticks cut, and that should be enough. Now according to the instructions, I need to be able to have each of these at least 5/8 by 5/8, and I actually have 3/4 by 3/4, and I'm going to need this a total of 4 inches long. So I'm going to set up the miter saw, and I'm going to cut all of these individual blanks so that they're the equal size. For this particular pen kit, the top and bottom of the pen blanks are the same size. Now this is the brass sleeve that goes inside of each of the blanks. Now I set the miter saw up so that this is going to cut this length of wood plus about 1/16 of an inch. Now that's the minimum, and typically what I'll do is set it up where it's about 1/8 of an inch long so that I have plenty of room to be able to square the ends and make sure that everything fits correctly. So I have that set up now on the miter saw. I'm going to go ahead and cut all of the blanks. Now this is the setup that I have. I have my stop block here. This is my 10-inch block because I can't get any closer to the saw. Then my brass sleeve goes right into position, and then I can bring the blade down, and you can see that's just a little bit longer, and that's about 1/16 of an inch. I think I'm going to go ahead and make that just a little bit longer for the wood. So I made that adjustment now, and let's take a look. Yeah, that's about 1/8 of an inch, so that should be good. Now for these set of pens, I actually make 10, so I need 20 blanks. What I like to be able to do though is go ahead and make an extra blank. So I'm going to make 21 blanks. And that would give me enough for a mistake if I have that along the way and I don't have to go back and reset up everything. Now I'm cutting all of the blanks to length now, and I'm actually making 1 extra pen because as I begin lasering the names, I am not going to show you the names of the people in this Army unit. So I'm making 1 pen with just U.S. Army on it. So now I have enough blanks for all 10 of the pens, plus I have 2 extras just in case something goes wrong. Next I want to go ahead and take these blanks, we'll mark the center, and we'll drill the holes. Now this takes an 8mm drill bit to put the holes into these blanks. Now I have the brad tip 8mm bits that work fantastic for the pens. That brad tip point actually makes it where it helps to keep it centered. To mark the centers on each of the blank, I'm just using my little square, and I could use a ruler. It doesn't really matter, but I'm marking from one corner to the opposite corner, rotating it, and marking again from the one corner to the opposite corner, and that establishes the center. Okay, now I've got all 10 of the blanks marked, and I've got my extra 2 blanks in case I just have an emergency or a blowout or something happens to these. I've already got 2 extra blanks ready to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and set it up where I can use the 8mm, and this is a brad tip bit, and I'm going to go ahead and drill all of the holes. Typically I have used the drill press in the past to be able to drill all the holes in these blanks, but recently I've started doing it on the lathe and have found that it works extremely well. I just put the blank directly into the chuck, and I'm able to drill that very easily. And then you can just swap it out and put the next one in. And this does an excellent job with drilling the holes, and it's extremely easy. Now all the holes are drilled in the blanks, and it's time to be able to put the brass tubes into these blanks. Now I'm using the 5-minute epoxy to be able to secure the brass tubes into the blanks. And one of the things that I want to point out that I have never had happen before, I had a couple of these blanks fail with the epoxy. So I switched over and started using the Starbond CA glue, and this was the thick variety to be able to put the rest of the blanks in. So that is something that you might want to consider. If you find that the epoxy is not holding well enough, switch over to the Starbond CA glue, and it will definitely hold. I had good success with that on the remaining of the blanks. Now I didn't get any video of that part. Quite frankly, I was a little frustrated that the 5-minute epoxy failed. But this is the process that you go through. You mix it up, you slip it onto the tube, and then from there you're going to put it into the blank and make sure that you have really good coverage. And typically what I'll do is slip the blank in and move it around and make sure that that glue can get all the way onto the surface, and then slide it in and actually have it stick out on the other side. That way I can actually put an additional epoxy on this side, because oftentimes it will get pulled off and not have a good coverage. So this way I can ensure that I have good coverage on the brass tubing all the way through the blank. And that's very important to be able to have a successful fit. And like I said, I did have a couple of fails on this, and I switched over to the CA glue to be able to finish them up. And then I just wipe off the excess, and I'm ready to just let them dry. Now even though this is 5-minute epoxy, I actually let these sit overnight so that they'll actually be completely and thoroughly dry. I do have an extra blank just in case I do have a problem. Cleanup is actually real easy. I use the alcohol just to be able to wipe off all the tools, and that cleans up the epoxy very easily. Now it's over to the drill press just to square up the ends, and that takes just a moment. This tool works perfect for this. I can just slip the blanks in and cut the ends, and it makes it where they're perfectly square. Now let's get over to the lathe and start the fun part. Now comes the fun part, and this is the actual turning of the blank itself. Now I'm using a gouge to be able to do the cutting, and this makes it where it literally goes very fast. Now I'm starting off at a slow speed, and then once I get it completely round, I'll go ahead and increase the speed. Now once I get all of this turned to the shape that I want, I'll go through the sanding process. Now I start out with the 60 grit paper, and as I'm sanding this, I want to be able to, between the grits, stop the machine and sand with the grain. That makes sure that it eliminates any of the sanding marks that might get onto the blank. Once I do that, then I'll go ahead and go to the next grit. So I start off at the 60, then I go to the 100, and I continue this process all the way through to a 600 grit paper. And at this point, I'm ready to be able to stop. And the reason being is the 600 grit paper on these pen blanks make for a very, very smooth finish. And that's what I want on these pens. Now the next step, I will take some of the sawdust and literally just burnish the wood. And again, that helps to make it where it's very, very smooth. Now the next step is just to clean the blank. And for this, I'm using the alcohol just with a paper towel, and I'm going to wipe it down where it's completely clean. It also gives you the first look of what the pen blank is actually going to look like. And here I'm also not only cleaning it, but I'm looking for any imperfections and see if there's any type of lines that's left from the sandpaper. In this case, it looks fantastic. So I move on to the next step, and I want to seal the wood. The next step that I do is I just put one coat of the shellac and the denatured alcohol mixture that I use, and I seal the wood. And one coat's really all that's necessary. And this is the mixture that I have, and I use this on all of my wooden pens. Now please make sure, use a paper towel to be able to apply this. You never want to use a cloth rag when you're working around the lathe. It's just too dangerous. A paper towel is far safer to be able to do this. And the good thing about it, that finish dries almost instantly, and I'm able to put a brand new set of blanks onto the lathe and start this same process all over again. And I'll continue and repeat this through all of the pens that I need to be able to make. Now I want to give you a real good close-up of exactly what the pen blanks look like. And I think this ash wood is absolutely beautiful. Now let's move over to the laser. So this is the setup that I have. I have the piece of wood in here to be able to make sure that it stays square on the X axis. My triangle takes care of being square on my Y axis. Then I have two pieces of wood in there to be able to support the dowel rod. The fire button with a 0.5% power is showing the alignment that I have where it's dead center on top of the dowel rod. So let's go ahead and engrave this. Now this is the test dowel rod that I used in the last video to be able to show you exactly how to set it up and engrave a dowel rod using the laser. And this did work extremely well. But I also just have two scrap pieces of wood sitting there, and I wanted to be able to do a better job. So if you wanted to put the engraving on your own pen blanks, I wanted a better method. So it's all finished. Let me grab this now. That looks absolutely fantastic. Now I'm not going to engrave the names on the pen for privacy's sake. And the reason being, these pens are for an Army unit that's deployed. My grandson is along with them, and he wanted to be able to have a special gift to be able to give to members of his unit. So in the interest of privacy, I'm not going to disclose their names, and I'm not going to disclose where they are deployed. But I do want to be able to say that this test with the dowel rod, and this is a 1/2 inch dowel rod, turned out absolutely fantastic. So I encourage you to be able to experiment and try different things with your laser. When I did the test engraving using the dowel rod, I just slid two pieces of wood up next to it to hold it in place. Well, I wanted to give you guys a little something better. So I took a little scrap piece of wood and put a little dado in here, and that way the pen blank will be able to fit right into this. Now I want to take a little pen blank and drop it in, and you can see it'll hold and stay steady. And then I'm going to secure this little scrap piece of wood to the table as well, so nothing's going to move. Now these pen blanks are actually 1 7/8 of an inch long. So all I'm going to do is just put a mark on the halfway point, and I'm going to set it where there's a little stop, and I can have this dead center when I do the engraving. My little block of wood is actually a little bit smaller than the length of the tube, and that's okay. So I'm going to have the right side as my reference point. This will be the center line, and then that is going to keep it all nice and square. Now I'm going to use the glue and the tape method again. And I'm using the Starbond glue to be able to hold this down, and it's not going to take much. So all I'm going to do is just get a small piece of tape, and I'm going to put it right down here on the table. And I'll put a small piece of tape on the back. Then all I'm going to do is just line this up. That'll be fine. Put just a little bit of glue on. It's not going to need much at all. Then I'm going to spray this. So I have this sprayed now with the accelerator. And I'm just going to go ahead and set this down. And that way it'll be nice and square. I'll hold that for just a moment. I like to be able to move it left and right just a little bit to make sure that glue spreads out. And now it's done. Now I'll be able to set this in, align it to the right side. I know this is square, so I won't need the triangle anymore. And I'll verify one more time to make sure that my height is okay. So I'll put that right there. And that will be perfect. So that's how I'm going to do the engraving. And that'll be the process. Now with the jig in place and it's all secure, I'm going to go ahead and move the laser over to get it centered. So the first thing I want to do is be able to get it aligned on the x-axis. Then I move it down to the center of the dado, and that way I know that it will be the center on my pen blank. And that looks fantastic. So let's go ahead and carve the first one. Now again, I'm not going to be using the names. I'm actually going to engrave the U.S. Army onto this blank. So this only takes just a moment to be able to engrave, and I love this process, and I think this is going to work out real well if you guys should try to do this. Being able to have this little simple jig secured onto the board makes it where it's almost foolproof. It's far better than my first test where I just had 2 pieces of scrap wood that had the potential for moving. This keeps everything stapled and lined so that you don't have any mistakes. And you can see from what this is engraving, it's looking really, really good. And give you a close-up look at the finished U.S. Army logo, and I think that's great. I have the pen blank now back on the lathe, and it's time to put the final finish on. And what I'm going to be using is the Starbond Thin CA glue. And I'm going to be putting multiple coats on, and this will dry virtually instantly, and I'll end up putting probably about 20 coats on, and I don't keep count. Now I do have a discount in the description below. You'll be able to receive a 15% discount on the Starbond glue with the discount code in the description below. Now if you'll recall, I went ahead and sealed these pen blanks with a little bit of the shellac and the denatured alcohol. So I'm just very lightly wet sanding that to make sure that it's as smooth as it possibly can be before I start the CA glue process. To be able to apply the CA glue, I'm using just a paper towel. I put a few drops on and just lightly rub it onto the blank. That's all that's necessary. And I'll repeat that and put on several coats to begin with. Now after doing probably 10 or 15 coats, I went ahead and stopped it. I'm going to spray the accelerator on it. Now, this accelerator makes it where it dries virtually immediately. Once I do this, then I can go ahead and continue, and I can add some additional coats of the thin glue. Now I'm going to continue this process until I have filled all of the pores in the wood, and it makes for an absolutely smooth finish. And this actually is a very hard finish that will last for years and years to come. So I'm going to put a little bit more on. I'm going to switch over to the thick CA glue. I'm going to put several coats of that on, and then we'll start going through the sanding process. Now, to apply the thick CA glue, it's exactly the same process. I'm going to be using the paper towel and just a few drops of the CA glue and lightly put it on the pen blank. It does not take much, and you don't have to put any pressure at all on the paper towel to the blank. I also want to point out that I'm constantly rotating the paper towel, and I'm putting drops of the CA glue on a clean section of the towel. There is no reason to keep putting the CA glue on the same place over and over. It's just not worth it. Use a clean section of the paper towel to be able to apply the CA glue. Now that looks amazing, and I haven't even sanded it yet. Beautiful gloss. Now to sand it, I'm going to use these sanding pads, and they go up to, I believe it's 12 thousandths on the grit. So that's a very, very fine, and it's going to be a brilliant, brilliant gloss. So I'm going to go ahead and start that now. And to be able to work through these different pads through the grits, it takes, again, very little pressure to be able to sand this. Now this is a wet sanding process, and between each of the grits, I will wipe off any residue that's on the blanks, and before I continue to the next grit. I wish you could see and feel this. It is so smooth. It is just absolutely fantastic, and the grain of the wood is just beautiful. Now then, to put the polish on this, I'm going to use, this is for the headlights, and this actually removes the cloudiness, yellowness, and the oxidation from the headlights. So this is a very, very fine polish. And then I'll finish it up with this product, and this is the protectant. So that is going to help maintain the high clarity and provides the UV protection. And these two working together makes an absolutely beautiful finish. Now I've done pens like this before. In fact, I have another pen that I've been using for over 10 years, and I've gone through countless refills, and the CA finish using this product is still like it was the day that I put it on. Absolutely fantastic. I'm not endorsing this. I'm not sponsored by them. I just know that this product works really, really well. Now I'm putting just a small amount of the polish on the paper towel, and then again I lightly go over the pen blank to be able to apply it. And I do that to each of the pen blanks, and I'll take a clean section of the paper towel and dry it off. And that's all that's necessary. You want to be able to remove this polish before it dries. If I were doing the headlights, of course I'd be using a microfiber cloth. So I'm still going to polish it with that. I'm just not going to turn the lathe on for this part. And that is just absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead now and put the other polish on it. That is the protectant with the UV protection. Now again, this only takes a couple of drops on the paper towel, and I lightly apply it to each of these blanks. And then I'll wipe off the excess, and that will be the last step on these pen blanks. So now we're ready to be able to assemble this pen. I'm going to set my cups of water out of the way, and we're going to go ahead and take this pen blank off of the lathe. The nice thing about these little bushings that I have here that I made, the CA glue does not stick to that with this pen blank, and it works fantastic. and it doesn't have a buildup on the bushings, and I really like that. When I start to assemble a pen, I like to be able to get all of the parts out and lay them out in order. Now this is the first time that I've used this particular pen kit, so I'm going to go ahead and follow the instructions right here that it shows exactly how these different parts will go together. I'm going to have this at the bottom, so I want the tip to go in there. And I'm going to go ahead and get all the parts out of the bag. You have two little sleeves, and they're both different. And this is the sleeve right here that will go into the bottom. Now it's very important that you don't press against these threads, because that will damage the threads. You actually want to go ahead and put this together. And then you want to be able to push it in to position. So I have that in place. And then I'm going to have the blank in position. Then I have this center band. That center band will go in. And then the upper tube, that will go in right there. This is the little cap nut that will go in, and it goes right there. And as far as all the little mechanisms, this is the pen refill here, and of course this spring will go on right there. This is the plunger that goes at the top. And we have this mechanism right here that makes the whole thing work. So that's going to be right there. So let's go ahead and start now putting this pen together, now that we got everything laid out. Now I'm going to put this next piece in, and this has a reducer diameter. That has to go in first, just like that. And then we're going to press that into position. Perfect. And now we'll join these two parts together. Okay, just gorgeous. Now the next thing I want to do is thread this into this end right here. And the next thing, we have to push this in place. And that seats into its position. This will slide in. Then we'll slide this onto here. Put that right there, even with this. I'll tighten that down. We'll take this end off. We'll slip the refill in with the pen, with the spring on it. And we'll screw that back into position. And And this pen is finished. It is just a beautiful pen. Absolutely love how this pen turned out. This was an absolutely fun project to be able to do, is to make this pen and engrave the U.S. Army logo. Now keep in mind, I'm making a whole bunch of these pens that I'm putting the names in place of where the U.S. Army is. And I'm not going to show the names or the unit or where these people are deployed. They deserve that privacy. But this was an absolute fun project to do, and I'm very happy to be able to help out the military and be able to do this type of a pen for them. I think they're going to enjoy it for years to come. Now, if you liked the video today, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below and the little bell notification next to it, because I have so many different videos planned in the near future. You're not going to want to miss out. So again, thank you for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you shortly on the next project.